Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Technology Masterclass. Today, we're going to be joined by Khumalo, who is the founder of Mali Mobile, as well as Vinay Hiralall, who's the General Manager for Demand Generation of Tarsus On Demand. And we're going to be speaking about all things digital. So thank you for those of you that are joining us live today, as well as those of you that have downloaded this recording or watching it on our YouTube channel. Mbe is going to be speaking to us about digital first businesses, an African perspective, and Vinay will be sharing more about digital ecosystems, the way of the future. I'm going to kick off the session with Mbe's presentation, but before I do that, let me just introduce Mbe to you as well. Mbe is a management consultant and entrepreneur. He has been working with us at YIEDI as a program manager, building technology businesses across South Africa. He's also a Massachusetts Institute of Technology Startup Lab alumni, and he focused heavily on developing startup strategies and technologies for third world and developing nations through rapid acceleration initiatives such as hackathons. Mbe has also pursued startup success, and he has worked as a business coach as well, with vast experience in the incubation and the small business development space, having mentored and assisted more than 125 small to medium businesses in multiple industries and with varying levels of size and maturity. Mbe, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for sharing some of your insights into digital first businesses and African perspective. Over to you.
Stop my video. Okay, and I'm hoping everyone can see, and I'm hoping it's on presentation mode, Jayshree, but that's okay.
It is Mbe, thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so colleagues, really wanted to speak on the issue of digital first businesses in African perspective. What brought this to mind for me to speak about has been, I'm always constantly taking a moment to just sit back and remember. Is it 2 years now from today, 2019 September? And, I remember, I think in 2019, I had been invited into one webinar that entire year that I can remember. But I was literally having 4 or 5 coffee meetings a week. And to fast forward to today, where just physically meeting other business leaders or business owners is almost impossible. People aren't even in the city anymore. They're not even nearby, people are in other provinces, etc. And it made me really think about this sort of digital first businesses and what that really means for us, an African perspective, but more importantly, a South African perspective. What does digital first businesses mean? And what is it going to require? What's it going to take for us to have and create these digital businesses, both from a product perspective in terms of what you're doing as a business, to a regulation perspective, particularly as it affects or as it pertains to our government. What exactly is the infrastructure we require that enables digital first reality for our businesses? And in the end, I'm just going to give you a few examples of digital first businesses or businesses that are playing very important, that are effectively role players in enabling other businesses to become digital first. So I'm going to just cover those sort of headings as the afternoon goes along. Please do raise a hand if you have a question. I'm not sure if I'll be able to see it because I'm on presentation mode, but I'm sure if you type it in the comments, I'll be able to read it after the presentation. Okay, so as a start, I guess we'd have to first understand, what are digital first businesses, particularly the South African perspective. What really are these digital first businesses? It's important to understand that it's entirely possible for traditionally offline bricks and mortar businesses and paper-based businesses to transition into a digital-first way of work. It's important, however, to avoid distilling the idea of digital down to a cool app or an optimized website, particularly this approach or this thinking that we are now digital first because we do everything on Zoom. This is not really correct. Going digital involves, you have to leverage technology. It's not defined by it. It's about leveraging it. In reality, making the shift to digital means changing more than just the software workflow of a business. It means reconsidering every aspect of a business, from the tools the employees use, the simplest of tasks in an entire organizational structure of a business becomes key. This is more and more prevalent and keeps presenting itself in how you find to troubleshoot having employees working in remote locations. Businesses are using very traditional, they're reverting back to traditional management methods to try and fix the problems that they're facing while they go digital. So a great example of this is, I won't name the company, but there was a post of an employee. He posted on social media, works for a company it's pretty decently well known, and in the company the employees are all working from home, everybody's got a laptop, etc. And famously the guy was live tweeting the fact that a number of employees weren't doing their jobs at home, they weren't really delivering, etc. And as a result, the management team, as a solution, what they've been doing, and they did this for like a week, where they set up a Zoom call that starts from 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock, and everyone dials into the Zoom call, switches on their camera, and everyone gets back to work and just does what they were doing on their laptop. No one talks, it's not a meeting, it's just get on the Zoom call, switch on your camera so that we know you're in front of your laptop and we know you're working. And that's a hilarious example of how companies that aren't prepared for digital first are reverting back to sort of the old school ways of believing that if someone is in front of you and you're looking at them, it means they're working. You know what I mean? And things like that really, really do happen in organizations, and they can prove to be stumbling blocks. Now, to really understand digital first, you have to look at these three key principles of running as a digital first business. Firstly, transparency. Consumers are wary of entrusting companies with their personal information. People want to know, consumers want to know that the company is prepared to do business in a digital world. It's easy to see why people are so wary of entrusting companies with their sensitive information. We've now seen so many of these data breaches, high-profile data breaches, actually being reported on by a number of organizations that I'm sure many of us have given or surrendered our data to. It's now become, if a business is transparent about how a consumer's information is used, that's we're finding is easier to gain customer trust. People want to know how you're going to use and how you're going to store the data. That's key, okay? Number two, personalization. Delivering personalization across countless touch points that exist in a modern consumer journey, it requires a lot of data. You need a lot of data, because what you're finding is people are engaging with digital interfaces of businesses, and they're required to give information, and multiple companies are asking the same information, which is frustrating a lot of consumers. It's frustrating consumers. So if you as an organization are able to establish a broad network of partnerships with companies that already have this data and insights that's complementary to yours, you'll have a more compelling picture of what a consumer wants. And most importantly, you limit the amount of interaction and engagement and asking questions that someone has already answered 5 or 6 times. And then human interaction, a favorite of mine. 70% of customers still prefer human interaction over communicating with bots, and your colleagues and partners are no different, Okay, the human interaction conversation is actually key. Customers want and expect digital engagement across a wide variety of channels, but they want these channels to supplement or lead to a more impactful human interaction, not to replace human interaction altogether. And this is something organizations need to really take quite seriously. Customers aren't really saying replace speaking to a person. They don't mind answering information with a chatbot, etc., as long as that becomes the foundation of what is going to be a more elevated and more enriched conversation with a person later, who asks much sort of softer questions as opposed to the basic name, surname, address, etc., etc. And I think there's still a lot of frustration about this. I personally don't like this sort of chatbot approach to engaging with businesses, because I think you may find yourself losing a lot of information and frustrating users. I mean, for instance, with the bank I bank with, one of the strategies they've deployed, I don't know, maybe some of you may remember this. One of the strategies they've deployed now is, you call the call center and then you have to select option 1, 2, 3, or whatever. But after you select, I don't know, business banking or personalized banking, whatever the option may be, the bank requires you to say what your problem is or what you require. So you speak, and then I imagine it's got an app or an AI that transcribes whatever it is you're saying and sort of takes you to a specific department. And this makes me so frustrated, because if I call my bank, first of all, I have the website, I have the app, I'm a pretty tech savvy guy. If something happens and I need to call into the bank, believe me that the reason why I'm calling is very complex. And I can't just quickly say it to an AI that is going to listen to keywords and end up sending me to the wrong department in any event. So that gives or results in this sort of frustration where you replace human interaction with electronics. I really like speaking to a person when I call my bank and telling them my long sob story, and hopefully they sort it out. I really like that. So yeah, as you plow ahead with adding more digitization, more interfaces, electronic interfaces of communication with customers, because you want that, right? You want to scale. The more you do that, please remember that actually people really like talking to people, and people form great relationships with an organization through the people that they engage with. That's a big deal, and I hope that you may keep that in mind. Okay, in order for us to achieve this sort of digital first world, there are a few basic building blocks that we're going to require, non-negotiables really. And one of them is, digital transformation. It will require digital transformation for us to fully capture the opportunity that is digital first. And there are 3 main components that I think you must keep in mind when we discuss the issue of digital transformation, right? So the 3 is, firstly, you have to be a people-centric organization. You have to center the people. The number of remote workers is expected to increase by 300% from the pre-pandemic levels, which means leaders must be aware of remote challenges that employees face. This is a big one. You will be surprised how geared towards human-to-human interaction organizations have been, even entire processes. Just the fact that I am doing this and I need someone to sign off on it, so I quickly get up on my desk, go to my colleague who is in the cubicle next door, and they sign off, and then I go print, sign, scan, and send to whoever I need to send to. All these business processes relied on us being right next to each other. And now that people are at home and completely remote, it's really disrupting a number of these things. Of these procedures and processes. Some of them are even government mandated, right? At times, you do need the signature to come from the line manager and the director, for instance, and it can't be an e-signature. Maybe it has to be a physical signature. You may find that companies have processes and procedures and policies that require that the signature must be, ink and not e-signature, etc. And those are the kinds of things you need to stop and now rethink. because we're all at home, we're not going to be able to achieve that. So how do we censor people so that we don't create this, the issue of frustration that may come from people being in different environments? 2, the customer journey is key. Technological advances in the consumer world have set the standard, and that same experience, and today's digital customers expect the same experiences when interacting with different providers, healthcare, insurance, etc. What I'm seeing here and why this point is important is that we are engaging significantly, particularly young people, are engaging significantly with social media and using social media now for e-commerce and buying things off of apps like Instagram, etc. And the user journey from I am experiencing something, I am interested in something, and I'm now paying for something and I receive it is so well done in industries like social media and the retail industries that it's creating a muscle memory in us as consumers. A muscle memory that we now demand from other industries. And we become so frustrated when we don't get that experience when you're trying to use the app for your life insurance policy provider, or you're trying to do a claim for a funeral policy or something, and you're finding that it's literally has not developed things that you expected. Hey, why isn't there a button that asks this, etc. It's creating a lot of frustration. It's because people are learning from companies that aren't even your competitor. They're just picking up certain things about digital transactions and interactions that is creating expectation in terms of that quality of that user interface. These people aren't even your competitor. They're not even in the same industry, but they're teaching the market, and it's going to affect you. So as a digital first business, you just quite simply have to have that story straight. You have to kind of know what people now expect from having engaged with other service providers, because it affects you directly. And finally, leveraging the edge. A big thing that I think is not being discussed entirely, right? More than 50% of new IT infrastructure will be deployed on the edge by 2023. I know I'm speaking to a largely technologically inclined audience, so I will assume that most people know what edge computing is. But to those of you who may not know what edge computing is, just made a quick slide to just explain better. Edge computing is, computing that takes place at or near the physical location of either the user or the source of the data. By placing computing services closer to the locations, users benefit from faster, more reliable services, while companies benefit from flexibility in hybrid cloud computing. So a good example for me to give in terms of edge computing, what it is and why it's so important, is, it still baffles me. It's 2021 and I'm watching the rugby and my DSTV freezes, and it freezes because you find out that it's raining somewhere on the other side of the world and they're tapped into that server, and it affects me here in sunny South Africa. And so you have this freezing, right? Even if it rains here, I get this freezing. So of my entertainment. If it's happening for something that is so big, our biggest number one digital entertainment service provider in the country, possibly continent, I'm not sure. You need to then understand how much more work we still need to do in terms of edge computing, because what edge computing then effectively says is, let's take the data, let's take the processing power, and let's bring it closer to where it's being utilized. Instead of us using some sort of cloud farm in Argentina that creates, a latency. Once you empower yourself as an organization using edge computing, it really starts to bring industries, for instance, like augmented reality into sharp perspective. If you don't have a really, really strong fiber connection, for instance, you find that if you're streaming something, the quality reduces, etc. With edge computing, augmented reality becomes a big deal. You can really start seeing things in real time, and you can start engaging with the data quite quickly without having any latency issues. And as mentioned in the slide, many edge use cases are rooted in the need to process data locally. So things like connected vehicles, we've got a bus rapid transit system. If we had an edge solution for a bus rapid transit system, it could give us real-time analytics on how many people are on which bus, which routes are most congested, where is there traffic, can we reroute our buses to avoid traffic, to make the trip more optimal, etc. You need that kind of information in real time, right? You can't have any data lags, there can't be any delays, you can't be downloading information. It's got to be in real time so that you can make real-time decisions that can delight the market. So that just speaks to some of the benefits, right? It reduces your computer network costs, you avoid bandwidth issues, etc. But of course, some people may be asking, edge sounds like a big deal. It sounds like it's a great approach, but why isn't it big currently? So I've worked in developing a strategy for special economic zones. So there are about 11 special economic zones in South Africa at the moment. About 4 of them are fully operational. I mean, we know about the ones in the Eastern Cape where they manufacture the Hilux and the BMWs, etc. We know about the ones in Richards Bay. Those are the ones that are quite actualized. There's a few that they're talking about that are going to be doing agro-processing, and there's the one that they're saying is the Aerotropolis. I can't wait to see it. The one here in Ekurhuleni, near OR Tambo. Can't wait to see that if it does at all happen. Now, what we're seeing is in the special economic zones, because the manufacturing taking place there is so high level, we're seeing that there's a need for edge computing. When you're manufacturing complex components like cars and assembling, etc., you need real-time data. You cannot afford any latency at all. So what we're finding is within or right next to these special economic zones, these big industrial manufacturing hubs, it's creating a desire for an edge solution as opposed to data sitting somewhere on the other side of the world. But of course, deploying edge means, safety and security, guys. Crime, crime is a big deal. To have edge computing servers and processors sitting next to a factory somewhere in Boksburg, how secure is that going to be? I mean, it's tens of millions of rands worth of an investment. How secure can it be? That really is the question that we're getting regarding edge. But as time goes on, I think edge computing is going to become a non-negotiable, particularly if you are in anything such as streaming, augmented reality, etc., that needs significant amounts of data in real time. It's going to become a non-negotiable, I think. Okay, so moving on. We're effectively in a new normal, right? 77% of customers will stick with digital channels moving forward. That's a big deal. When the pandemic hit, everyone went indoors. Every aspect of our lives changed, including the way we do business. The effects were quite astounding. Person-to-person mobile money transfers in Rwanda increased 4-fold during the first month of the lockdown. First month. As a result, contactless payments became a non-negotiable. Also, the issue of harnessing loyalty. What I'm finding is that, particularly with the travel restrictions, there are a number of businesses, if you travel, etc., that you've supported before, a company you've gone to, or a wine farm you've visited, etc. And then the travel restrictions made it really difficult for us to go out and support these businesses. But what we are actually seeing and observing is that, unlike in the past when businesses had to put out ads, etc., customers who have had really good experiences with your brand, with your company, with your product, are using their phones to actively seek out the brands and businesses that they support in order to interact with them and do business. People are actually trying to find that small batch manufacturer that they bought from back in 2019, that craft manufacturer that they supported. People are looking for you online. So this just speaks to organizations that may be small, companies that may be small and thinking, gosh, we're just going to sit this out we don't really have a digital strategy. What's the point? People are actually looking for you. If they've had decent experiences with you and they remember, they're trying to find you on social media, they're trying to find a website, they're hoping you've got an e-commerce enabled website so that they can support you. So this is key. And in order to capture that opportunity and maximize, one, satisfaction is a big deal. Does your digital presence thrill your customers? Does your digital presence thrill your customers? Big question. Loyalty. Does your digital presence make your customers feel like you care, that they matter? People will leave your brand so quickly these days. We see this with cell phone networks. Suddenly people have 3, 4 SIM cards. I've got baby cousins with 4 SIM cards. They get a SIM card because there's a data special, and then now I've got 4 numbers that I've saved for the same person. We see it with banks. More and more people. I mean, I've been closely observing Bank Zero that launched. I was one of the early adopters, actually. I've been closely observing, even on social media, people are ditching their big established bank accounts and even Time Bank, opening these newer, smaller opening accounts in these newer, smaller banks. So loyalty is a big deal. Does your digital presence make your customers feel like you care, that they matter? Because there's a lot of competition out there. And finally, advocacy. And this is becoming very, very big for a number of businesses. Does your digital presence make your customers feel like they're part of something bigger? Does it make them feel like they're part of the business? And we see this from, for instance, our insurance provider, I think our biggest insurance provider that has invested a lot in lifestyle. I won't mention them, but I think you know who it is. They track the health, the status of your health, the food you eat, the wearable, the gyms, there's points. Now they've got a bank. They're literally part of every step of your life, right? And people are really lapping this up. They're buying into this. So this becomes an important consideration to keep in mind. Now, in terms of surviving COVID-19 for small businesses and beyond, beyond the curve, as it were, companies in digital or data-related industries, develop tech-based products and services like medical contactless payment apps, or new uses for wearables, etc. Those who reacted quickly adopted new ways to sell, and they managed their staff and operations, etc., remotely quite well. And they made some great pivots, which included changing value propositions, relooking your delivery channels, or even your customer base. Companies that did this are literally still here, they're surviving, but a number of companies just decided to sit this out. A number of companies are trying to fight this thing and are trying for things to go back to normal. We are already in this normal. Okay. Now, moving on, it's important to understand that when exploring ways to improve a business going digital, you have to keep a couple of things in mind. The issue of consistency. Both customers and employees expect the same process and result across the web and mobile platforms. While the information displayed can and should be, optimized for a specific device, the process of ordering a product, scheduling a service, accessing support should be consistent, both on the user end in terms of the customers, but also your employees. So that consistency has to be key. The user experience also has to be prioritized. Big deal. The easier, more familiar, more fluid the digital experience is, the more likely we are to make it a habit. More likely we are to make it a habit as customers. One of the other building blocks that I really wanted to speak on quickly was the issue of 5G. Right, so we've spoken about digital transformation. 5G is also going to play a big role. The 2 announcements on 5G alone, that they first of all, they process 1,000 times more data than today's systems. Next year, in terms of South Africa, Google's the sea cable that's going to connect Portugal to South Africa, they're saying it's going to give us 20 times the capacity of current cable serving us, 20 times. Just unbelievable. And then there's the one that's coming in 2023, the submarine cable project to Africa, the one that's connecting the UK to most of Africa. They're saying that is literally going to give, it's effectively going to be more than double what all our current cables are providing in terms of processing ability to South Africa. So as a business, positioning yourself as digital first, no matter how high the demand for connectivity is going to be, no matter how rich the interactions are going to be, you have to just rest assured that infrastructure-wise, at least by the end of this year, if this Portugal thing is anything to go by, and by 2023, if you're more a large enterprise, you need to just rest assured that the infrastructure will be enabling. So how do you take advantage? How do you capture that? 20 times the capacity of current cabling is a game changer already. But by 2023, gosh, sky's the limit. How do you capture that? Big question. Okay, and then the other big question, another which I think is more a building block, if I could call it that, is these 4 headings. One, 4IR, which I'll speak on in detail in the next slide. Human capital, your actual human capital, future skills, and e-readiness. Okay, so digital readiness is a big question. We're talking about digital transformation. We're talking about 5G so that we can have digital first businesses. But what is our digital readiness as a market? Are people really ready? And that is answered, or at least is discussed in these 4 headings. Firstly, the 4IR question, projected to bring disruptive changes in the labor market. The human capital question, digital transformation and innovations in the 4th industrial revolution demand a new breed of worker and citizen, one that is skilled, innovative, and technologically savvy. Are your employees, do they meet this? Are they skilled, innovative, and technologically savvy for when you actually take that next sprint over the next 2 years as you capture the opportunity of these amazing technological advances that we're seeing coming? The issue of future skills. Governments are now focusing on developing the so-called future skills, some of which are not yet in existence. I don't really have any line of sight to our high school curriculum, but I'm hoping that from grade 9 onwards, we should be entrenching these so-called future skills. And finally, the issue of e-readiness. You'll be surprised. E-readiness and e-literacy in this country is, you'll be surprised about how much more work still needs to be done. We're not who we think we are as a nation, I think. I've noticed most recently, I went to McDonald's, and I'm sure if you've gone to McDonald's recently and you've walked in, not the drive-through, if you've walked in, you'll notice that they've now gone full digital in terms of sales. You don't walk to the counter anymore. There's that self-service kiosk. There's a number of them there. And you actually can't go to the counter anymore unless you have hard cash. But if you have a card, they literally tell you have to use that machine. It's astounding to me how many people struggle. I mean, I was in McDonald's, I just stood there for a few minutes. I watched 3 or 4 different profiles of people, male, female, between the ages of 25 and 40, someone who's holding a Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, with 5 camera lenses or whatever at the back. And this person can't order a Big Mac. They just can't. They're struggling with the options, and how to customize, etc., and to finish just ordering a Big Mac. And you'll be surprised, our e-literacy and our e-readiness when it comes to people engaging with your products, your solutions, is potentially not where you think it is. We're not who we think we are. We may potentially not be as ready. The South African market may not be as ready. If something as simple as buying a product in store and you need assistance, I mean, you're going to struggle when you start looking at more complex transactions, particularly in things like the blockchain and cryptocurrency, where you've got a hardware wallet that you have to link onto another service provider. You've got liquidity pools. These things are complex. I look at those things and I think to myself, if we're still struggling to order stuff on McDonald's, from McDonald's, how long is it going to take us to get here? So keep thinking about the issue of e-readiness of your customers. Just because they tweet every day and they post on Instagram, it doesn't mean that they'll be able to just easily use your e-commerce solution and engage with your products digitally. It's not a given. Okay, so I said I'd speak about the fourth industrial revolution. The reason why I just quickly wanted to speak on it is not so much I've been hearing very frightening answers from people whenever I ask them, what is 4IR, or when people discuss 4IR, they just seem to not have a simple answer for what 4IR is. So when people ask you what is it, you must just tell them it effectively makes reference to these 6 innovations, these 6 headings. There's IoT, there's robotics, 3D printing, biotech, cloud computing, blockchain. Okay, 4IR is basically the majority of it is basically this. On the IoT side, we're going to see significant progress here. Sensors, meters, and chips. IoT is becoming a big deal. I engaged with an SME that has been working quite closely in IoT and assisting local government in tracking of the delivery of services in different parts of rural, of our more rural provinces. Robotics, another big deal. Many industrial applications for this, particularly in things like agriculture. We're seeing robotics play a big role here. 3D printing, I am paying very close attention to 3D printing. In the beginning, over the last 18 months, 3D printing was more, very elemental, people printing small little things, but it's now really taking shape, particularly in Europe and the States. More and more people are printing much more complex pieces of hardware and electronics. And, the stronger and the better 3D printing becomes, the more it could literally short circuit and could revolutionize things like like route to market, the very conventional route to market that we have currently, manufacture something in China, import, get an Alibaba or whatever to deliver it to your home, etc. All of that could literally be short-circuited with 3D printing. People could have 3D printers in communities and municipalities and neighborhoods where all they do is just buy the licensing to print your product. So you have a game, or you have whatever your hardware product might be. Instead of me importing it from China, I can just buy the license to print it here at home, and you send me your schematic drawings or whatever. So the 3D printing reality is going to be big, and I think it's going to change the issue of the supply of electronic goods as time goes on. And I'm not even talking about the 3D printing of like food, edible stuff. That could literally break the entire food supply chain as we understand it when people start printing their own food. I'm just still talking about hardware products. I'm watching this one very carefully. I think something big is going to happen here, decentralizing the supply and the manufacturing of goods using these 3D printers. I think something very important is going to happen here over the next few years. We'll see. Biotech, big one in the application of living organisms. Product development, medical uses that include vaccines, big one. Hot potato, that one, vaccines, hot potato. Suddenly biotech is inside every person's household. Everyone in the country is thinking about it. All thinking about it, all talking about it. It's in our households. Cloud computing, don't really need to talk too much about that. I think we understand it. And the blockchain, I still think we're quite early on in the blockchain, in adopting, the blockchain. We're still talking a lot about cryptocurrency, which is fine. We may be in this sort of cryptocurrency obsession for a couple more years, but as time goes on, I can't wait to see when we really start to understand and unpack the benefit of having a digital trust ledger. and amazing things that can be done. The benefit of the blockchain, more than just cryptocurrency. I can't wait to see how far we'll be able to take the blockchain. So if someone says 4IR, guys, these are the headings. This is what it's about. At least you have an answer. Okay, so then I want to just towards the end of this presentation really speak about how far we are. Okay, where are we in terms of digital first businesses? I've discussed, what it requires, what are digital first businesses, what is going to be required for them to become a thing, etc., to empower them, what are the building blocks, but where are we with this currently? What's out there? Who's already doing this? Who's already figuring this out? So I'm actually quite inspired about some of the businesses that I've observed that are already sort of digital first, or a company whose service is effectively a role player in enabling digital first businesses. Firstly, it became very clear during the lockdown how vital spaza shops are for South Africa's food security. And so there's an app called Vulega. It facilitates collective bulk buying, warehousing, and distribution of FMCG goods for spaza shops. So in so doing, they help these spaza shops build credit profiles for informal and unbanked business owners, offering loans to purchase stock and enabling them for their customers to buy on credit. The app collects data about products and consumers, selling it back to manufacturers, which provides a revenue stream. Vulega is a nice story. I think last year we heard about we heard about a number of initiatives to help spaza shops, but spaza shop owners quite literally just didn't have any infrastructure in place. They didn't have bank accounts, etc., in order to capture these funding opportunities from government. So apps like Vulega doing really good work. Abiri is another one, a mapping service that uses drones to convert footage into digital maps for townships to allow easy access. Why is Abiri a big deal? The using of drones to map townships, particularly townships where informal settlements don't have normal grid, a normal conventional grid in terms of roads. We were finding, particularly in places like Alexandra, Diepsloot, where there's a main road and then there's these sort of roads in between the shacks that are difficult to access. No one really understands it, and these guys are mapping that out. So if you're trying to do something for the township, deliver things to townships, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can call these guys. Okay, I'm rounding up, guys. Another company, Cuevo. The founders saw an opportunity in the gig economy. They help individuals who lost their jobs due to COVID-19. And they say that they have what they call a liquid workforce. So as a startup, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to get people to work with you, for you. Here's Cuevo, they'll help you find your labor, and your labor will be working from home. You don't even have to meet them. And you can immediately just plug them into your organization and off you go. YIEDI is another one, arranges deliveries to townships and households and spaza shops using minibus taxis. Again, us addressing the last mile by using existing infrastructure such as taxis. Finally, companies like GetLaw, an interesting one, an online only legal service platform offering micro transactions. It's 12 attorneys across the country. They're now providing their services via a 15-minute bundle. It can be WhatsApp, SMS, or a call. We never thought the law would be a digital-only kind of solution. You usually want to sit down and talk to a lawyer. These guys have sorted it out. You can just do it on WhatsApp. And then finally, Averly, it uses an AI machine. I think this company is based in Cape Town. Uses an AI learning machine technology for the property rental market. Basically, it tracks all your past. It creates a record for places that you've lived in before. And if you want to rent a new place, it allows your new landlord to see your history and decide whether or not they want to let you into their home. So these are just examples I wanted to give you guys of organizations that have already done a lot of heavy lifting in terms of providing infrastructure that either allows you to go digital first and plug into these ecosystems as time goes on. Jayshree, I think I've reached the end of my presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mbe. That was really quite informative. Before I get into just some questions from my side or more conversation around this, I'd like to just hear from some of our individuals on the line. If they have any questions, please do feel free to raise your hands and then unmute yourself, and then we can take your questions for Mbe. Questions or comments? Okay, Mbe, I see there aren't any questions or comments. So Mbe, I noticed on your 4IR slide, you talked about cryptocurrency, and I think just a couple of days ago, I'm sure I saw a headline that said, China's banned all cryptocurrency. I mean, what are your thoughts on something like that? And how easy is it for us to adopt as a continent cryptocurrency when, one of the biggest developing countries like China is now saying they're banning all cryptocurrencies?
Okay, two things, Jayesh, thanks for the question. Two things. One, as they say, China doing this is effectively giving more and more people opportunity to buy the dip. And secondly, having observed cryptocurrency for about 5 years now, this isn't the first time an announcement like this has taken place. But what I'm observing, and then it's creating a lot of confidence, is that announcements like these aren't shocking the cryptocurrency world as much now. We're finding that the main coins aren't, collapsing. It's not a 30-40% regression like in the past. As a market, we're just slowly starting to see that we don't really need significant buy-in from the big economies. This thing is a reality. It's not going to get killed by one country or even 10 or many countries saying they're not going to do this. This thing is really, really here now. 5 years ago, an announcement like this was a huge shock. Now it's like, well, it's not so bad. And for us as Africa, I think we definitely have no choice but to start taking this seriously. It will allow and it'll enable us to do so much. It'll open up the economy. It's going to disrupt peer-to-peer transactions, paying for things, sharing money, etc. I can't wait to see how our normal banks and financial services providers respond to this. I think it's just going to be a benefit for us as consumers.
Thanks. Thank you so much for that, Mbe. So if there aren't any other comments, Harmony, I see you are on the line with us. I don't know if you're in front of your computer, but earlier today, Mbe also touched on, the use of AI and bot technology and that impact on customer service or customers still wanting human interaction. I mean, how have you experienced this space or the adoption of bot technology? Because you smack bang in the middle of that space. So Harmony, if you are on the line with us, I'd love to hear your comments on that as well.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, Harmony, we can hear you.
All right. Sorry. I think I'll just talk about how we have actually implemented some of these emerging technologies in the banks and then as well as in the financial services. I think it was COVID has actually accelerated the need for this kind of services. We've implemented a couple of bots in one of the banks, and actually we've seen the uptake in user engagements, basically between the bot and the users compared to before. So we implemented the bot in 2018. So in 2018, towards the end of the year, and then last year, just about when COVID started, there was an uptake of about 45% in the engagement And then that has also improved the user engagement in such a way that people no longer need to wait. They no longer need to sort of like, they no longer need to wait for services. And then now they're actually able to just, improve their operational services or their operational engagements. So there has been some really good adoption in terms of with regard to the bot side of things, and then automation in general as well. Like there's been a lot of adoption in companies, as a lot of companies are looking for ways to actually engage their customers digitally.
Well, thank you so much for that, Harmony. Okay, so now we're going to move over to our next speaker, and that's Vinay Hiralall from Tarsus On Demand. So I'm just going to pull up Vinay's profile as well. So Vinay is the General Manager for Demand Generation from Tarsus On Demand. And since January 2019, he's been responsible for Tarsus On Demand's marketing, market development, partner experience, and product marketing functions. Vinay is an innovator. He's created a unique partner program which has changed the channel management ecosystem. And his passion lies in seeking out new markets and developing programs and solutions to solve for any challenges these markets face by creating ecosystem thinking. So being at the forefront of creating digital ecosystems, he loves exploring new platforms and learning about new technologies from others, promoting collaboration. And today, Vinay is going to be speaking to us about digital ecosystems and the way of the future. And this part of the masterclass is going to be more conversational in nature. So Vinay, over to you. I'd love for you to introduce this topic, and then we'll have a conversation around it.
Jayashree, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invite. It's great being here and getting the opportunity to speak to you as well as members of the audience. I do see, before I continue, there's a hand up from Paseka, if I got that correct.
Yes, Paseka, apologies, sure I didn't see your hand go up, but sure. Over to you with your question or comment. I'm just going to allow you to speak. Apologies.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jayashree. For a moment, I was battling to find my mic. I thought, what's happening here? Anyway, well, first and foremost, welcome back, Jayashree. It's good to hear your voice and back among us, the technocrats. Thank you very much for this session. I have three questions for the previous speaker. Is he still on the call?
Yes, he is. He's there, Paseka. You can go for it.
All right. So he mentioned 3D printing of food. Now, that was very fascinating for me, considering that most of the 3D printing is built around polymer printing. Is there a new development in the industry that he would like to share with us so that we could also innovate around that, perhaps?
Mbe, over to you to respond to Paseka's question.
Hope you can hear me. Paseka, hi. Yes, I've been reading up on and watching a number of videos online that show this sort of food 3D printers. At the moment, it's more commonly, food grade, these sort of syringes that hold the printing material and deposit it through, nozzle layer. And what I'm more interested in is I see at the very early stages, the videos that I've seen on this, trying to prove, someone 3D printing a piece of steak or a whole burger, it's still quite experimental. But I'm getting to the point where I think it'll be interesting to see us getting to a point where you can just 3D print staple foods, oats for large consumption. Because I think people will be less and less finicky about eating, 3D printed food that isn't fancy, but is to have a nice, have sushi or whatever. But I'm interested in seeing if you are not that finicky about the presentation of the meal, and the taste is okay, I think there'll be significant adoption on the staple side of things for 3D printed food. Just a guess, I don't know, but I'm excited about it.
Okay, no, thanks for that. Interesting. So my second question is in relation to the biotechnology. Do you think there will be an exception as far as a trialing phase of these technologies from animals to humans in relation to the urgency and need of the technology? You've raised a very hot topic, the vaccines for one. They have just come through at a rapid rate, faster than any other medicine in the history of the medical industry. You know, they were just presented to us. Well, that's a topic for another day, how and what was done to trial them, but the pace of them being from inception to presentation has been fast. Do you think there will be an exception to these trials in future for the sake of biotechnology progress?
Very controversial question. Very controversial question. And like I said, hot potato, you're right. From initial manufacturing to testing to delivery for mass consumption has been astronomical. It's been the fastest we've ever experienced. Vaccines usually take 10 years. This one was done 8-9 months, and it's global. Quite interesting. What I'm more interested in and I'm observing is the muscle memory this will create. The muscle memory in us as people, as society, saying, okay, it's not tested, but this issue is big enough that we can circumvent those checks and balances. That's what I'm interested in that muscle memory that I think has now currently been entrenched in the market, to say, skip animal trials, skip human trials, go to full deployment because the crisis is big enough. That's what I think is becoming engineered in us. And I wonder what that will lead to 5 years from now, in terms of allowing more biotech products that don't need to be tested because the emergency is serious enough. I wonder.
Paseka, thank you so much. I mean, you've got some great questions. I know you had 3. Would you mind parking the last question till the end of the session? Would that be okay with you?
Sure, not a problem. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. So Vinay, we're going to move over to you in the interest of time. And I know that some of our participants have joined specifically to hear you on this particular topic. So I'm going to hand over to you, and Paseka, we will come back to you at the end of the session for that final question and any other questions that you guys may have. Thank you, Vinay.
Thanks, Jayashree, and thanks, Mbe, for the comprehensive covering. Prior to this, I think majority of what you mentioned also speaks to the topic that I'm talking about today when it comes to digital ecosystems. And being in the tech space for the past 10 years, it's sort of given you a view to how business has transitioned over a period of time and what's been taking place in terms of the market shifts to galvanize both economies of traditional nature and the new economies to go through. So what I often refer to as the Great Migration has been more or less accelerated, I would say, over the past 18 months. And when I refer to the Great Migration, I'm talking about businesses that are traditionally physically based and in person and in customer that are now starting to create, as Mbe mentioned, the digital personas and presence and transcending into the digital economy. This digital economy has promoted huge developments and innovation that we can see every single day. But I think over the past 18 months, you've seen the best of it when it comes to the elevation of e-commerce platforms, logistics, being able to order food and get it delivered to you within the next 45 minutes. That allowed for what we now know as a digital ecosystem upliftment in South Africa, where the value chain of these logistic partners and suppliers and buyers have all been connected in a way that the customer, ultimately you or I, perceives more value that's coming through from it. So I've put together a few slides today to talk around digital ecosystems and just a few key points to note when it comes through. Specifically, what we're looking at from a Tarsus on-demand perspective is that we work with tech startups and innovative companies to give them access to the ICT channel within South Africa. And we do so by hosting our own digital marketplace, which sits in front of an ecosystem that we've built up. So if you haven't prepared your organization as yet, I'm just going to talk through a few key points about how digital presence leads to digital integration and ultimately to belonging to an ecosystem, and how you could accelerate and scale the physical boundaries of commerce or business as we know it and move into the next stage of development of your business. So I think when we talk about digital ecosystems, it's important to understand that one entity can belong to multiple ecosystems. But in each and every ecosystem, there's a core orchestrator of that ecosystem, and there are participants. And these participants and orchestrators work together to create value that they then provide to a specific target market or a customer base that's in need. What we commonly refer to as the job to be done is usually at stage one embarked on by the orchestrator of the ecosystem. So their significant role when it comes to the digital ecosystem is to identify market trends and ideally the needs or the job to be done from the customer. This insight and market research is then brought back into the collective ecosystem and shared with partners across the board to help develop and solve for specific problems that the channel faces. What this allows for then is it allows for scalability through a digital boundary, meaning that you would be able to access not just customers that are within geographic bounds to you, but you're able to scale the traditional realms of business and offer through partner channels different services and solutions, and you may bundle and partner services with other entities similar to yourself to help create value at the customer level at the end of the day. So a prime example of digital ecosystem that we are orchestrating at Tarsus On Demand is referred to as our partner marketplace. And we've been invested in this for the past 3 years in the sense that we hold a partner channel or partner reseller ecosystem that's over 1,000 partners strong and spread across South Africa. And what this partner channel does is that these resellers and channel members are the closest to the customer at the end of the day. So when we talk about digital transformation and digital upliftment and what the customer actually wants, they are first getting the information from the customer directly. We then use this information alongside our partner channel to understand exactly what are the technology trends being delivered into country and how we could best serve these customers. What we've created is a partner marketplace that then works with ISVs or software development companies across the African continent to develop specific solutions that solve problems for these specific customers that we sell through a partner network. Now, being able to orchestrate an ecosystem like this takes a lot of time and resources, and it's very capital intensive. Hence, I mentioned this project started over 3 years ago. And I think the biggest learning for us at the end of the day is how we go about creating shared value amongst the different participants. Everyone has a role to play. This has to be mutually beneficial in the sense that we're all working towards a common goal.
Vinay, can I just come in there? I know that we have some of our startups on the line with us as well.
Yes.
So I'd really like to understand practically, what does it mean for a technology startup to work with an organization like Tarsus, through this digital ecosystem focus? So what does that look like in terms of them engaging with you? And what do you think the biggest takeaway is for a startup wanting to embrace digital and the digital ecosystem?
Well, I think in theory, there's many people talking around digital ecosystems and potentially how they would build one for the future. And in reality, we have one currently at play. So we've got an ISV ecosystem, which consists of many startups like the members of YIEDI and some of the members on the call today as well. And the core benefit is that if you look at their business life cycle, especially when it comes to the tech startups, you have a great idea, you get the financial backing that you need, and your first goal is to solve a problem for a customer that's willing to pay for that solution. You're successful in that regard and you gain a substantial customer base, but then you're blessed with the curse, if I could say it that way, of consistent growth that you need to achieve. And the challenge we face is that our sales and marketing channels as an organization, especially at the first 3 to 5 years, are limited to direct engagement. So we rely on a sales force, we rely on referrals, we rely on networking quite a bit to make these extensions. When what a digital ecosystem offers you is the opportunity to partner and access new markets, but new customers at the same time. So at Tarsus On Demand, we've done this for multiple independent software vendors and tech startups, where we go through a phasing program. So we work with the likes of YIEDI, where you have the commercial upliftment and the strategy, and you achieve your product market fit as a tech startup. And then we work with you to help firstly achieve the technical fit. So we've got a host of technical advisors that sit and have a look at your environment, and ideally from 2 aspects assess it. One, can we scale this technology? And if we do scale and scale your business, can this technology cope with it? And the second is, are we cost optimized? So helping you reduce your cost, and we understand the cash implications of being a startup. So reducing that cost and the cost of your hosting of your solution is very, very important. Second to that, we've got a fantastic marketing team that works in your go-to-market. There's a big difference between selling into a digital ecosystem versus selling direct, and we refer to it as a sell-to versus a sell-through model. So a sell-to model being the direct, and a sell-through, selling through a partnership or to a channel. And what we often encounter is that most tech startups, or startups in general, you have one set of core messaging when it comes to your marketing, and that appeals to your initial target market, or it's far too generic in nature. So this team actively works with you to create a sell-through model and to understand how is your solution best positioned that it's mutually beneficial within the ecosystem for a partner or a reseller to consume, and then for a customer to understand and get through your solution. And then, of course, the integration into the marketplace. So if you like, you can think about it like an e-commerce site, but for software solutions that's available to the majority of South Africa. And these solutions, their positioning is very important, because you're positioning to the partner and you're positioning to the customer within that marketplace. So we assist you with that positioning, but also the back-end provisioning and the support structures that go along with it. We often talk about the operational strain that an organization receives when they are successful in an indirect model. You've got to have back-to-back SLAs, payment gateways, set processes and procedures that show compliance, especially when it comes to software for your customers and the partner channel. So we assist with those programs to help you develop that and create that strategy that's not only scalable within our marketplace, but it's repeatable. So you could take this model and you could scale through other ecosystems globally as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, you know, what we've seen in the last almost 2 years now, you know, since we've been affected by COVID, is just such a huge uptake of technology solutions and digital solutions from non-technology companies. And I really want to touch on this, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And Mbe, feel free to come in here as well. But we're finding like Paseka, who asked the question. So just to give you some background, Paseka is an entrepreneur on one of our property accelerators, but he has a leakless valve system, you know, to save water. So sorry, Paseka, I know I'm oversimplifying your solution, but it's basically a mechanism within the toilet system. But having worked with Paseka and understanding his requirements, he also indicated a need for focusing on an IoT type solution where you can monitor the loss of water across different areas or industries, or even within the mining sector. So, you know, that's a whole other focus that we are now working with him on with the technology company. So even a company like that you would think is just manufacturing, has a technology requirement. And in addition to that, I mean, you spoke about payment gateways, or, you know, think of it as the e-commerce for software solutions. Almost every organization within this period has had to think about taking their products to market in a digital fashion, I mean, including our business. Yeah. So we were predominantly face-to-face training and teaching, And now we have to deliver all of these type of programs, using technology platforms and using e-learning platforms and buying licenses that we never thought we'd have to invest in. So, how do we create this level of urgency or increase the level of adoption of technology with these non-traditional technology companies?
It's a very good question, Jayshree, and I think the example that you use now is quite precise. We've seen it across the board, where when we get asked where's the digital adoption and transformation taking place, one would assume that it's in the CBDs and people building new applications that are scaling, but it's not, especially amongst the farming community. I know of a wine estate down in Cape Town that's using IoT just to measure their crop and their crop yields, and that information becomes insights to the rest of that community or that farming community, and they've been able to monetize it at a global scale. So I think when you talk about COVID-19 and the impact that it had on businesses, many people thought about the digital transformation. Sometimes that scarcity forces innovation in your thinking. And they thought about scenarios where they could scale their business. But to a large extent, some traditional businesses got comfortable. And with this pandemic in place, it forced you to think differently and adopt new methods. When we often talk about digital transformation, we often talk about it in the business context. And we go, how do businesses go digital so customers can find them? But a similar migration or transition is happening in the home space. I mean, we talk about smart homes in the future, and some of you might be seeing some of the technology that's coming out of the US, the UK, where it's you can check out through the stores on your own. You've got your deliveries being accepted automatically. And this entire smart home operates based on connectivity and based on connected devices. That's there. So it also opens up a new market channel for businesses, because the example that you use now, if it was a connected device in IoT that can be robustly rolled out and at scale achieve efficiency, then it's adopted by a new channel together. So I think traditional businesses that are looking to adopt a new way and a new way of thinking need to listen to the market a bit more. And what I mean by that is there's many, it all starts with a question. Most people that are looking for solutions to problems start with a question. Ideally, it starts on either Google or one of your search platforms, and they start to research and understand a bit more about what are the options before they make a decision. And we call this the buyer's journey, essentially. And that's shifted quite a bit. So the awareness that's being created online at the moment, the content that's being developed and delivered, not only from technology companies, but from other companies as well. That's where you need to listen carefully to what's happening, into the chat forums and so forth. And you'll quickly identify ways and means to shift your business into a technology focus. If you need access to technology and technology advice, you have an idea and you're unable to manifest this from a technology perspective, then partners that belong, for example, to Tarsus on demand, this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. They understand what your core problem is or where you want to go and how you want to augment your business, and they facilitate that through digital advisory and technology for you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vinay. I mean, I'd love to open up for any questions or, areas that Vinay might have mentioned. And if you want clarity on that, feel free to raise your hand and we can address those to Vinay, because I'd like this to be more conversational in nature. Vinay, I'm working with quite a few organizations at the moment talking about the lack of digital skills. So within South Africa, we still do have this challenge of accessing the right level of digital skills to help us take these traditional businesses forward. But in addition to that, there's also a huge challenge that we have from an infrastructure perspective, and that goes to, the base infrastructure that's needed to run successful technology businesses in terms of access to data and the high cost of data that we currently have as well. And I'd love to hear what some of your thoughts are on that in terms of some of the barriers that's preventing businesses, especially township businesses, from fully embracing technology and digital solutions as a solution to scale and grow their businesses?
Yeah, Joshi, I think my view might just be very controversial on that, but I think the ones responsible for the high costs of data should accept some of the burden and reduce these barriers to open the market a bit more. We all know, I mean, almost every South African at the moment, employed or not, has access to even a cell phone that's there. So I'm going to talk about the digital literacy part first. There's open-ended programs when it comes from Google, Microsoft, or any other big tech company that's promoting digital literacy, and not necessarily just on their platforms, but across the board, because they understand that by increasing digital literacy, they're raising the next generation of customers for themselves as well. And these platforms potentially should be opened up, in my view, to the majority of South Africa. I see some of the local ISPs are starting to do that, and some of the local telecom companies, where if you are a subscriber and so forth, they give you access to certain platforms and so forth. But the cost of data is definitely a barrier to entry. And my personal view is, I think in the next year or year and a half, and some of the 5G initiatives that Mbe spoke about as well, what we hear in the market is that this barrier to entry will be drastically reduced, especially with the recovery that South Africa is going through.
And with regards to the digital skills gaps that we're currently facing, how do we address some of that?
Well, I think it's a relationship between private and public sector. It's a responsibility more than a relationship that exists. I mean, we often skill for the sake of contractually skilling, if I could use that, but we've got to skill with the end in mind. And we're currently working with a few service providers, both in the townships as well as in urban areas, to provide this digital literacy and digital skills to the communities. And we're building towards, and I know you guys also host a few hackathons and so forth, but we're building towards this digital literacy and making it the core. And part of the digital skills that we talk about in the future that's needed, apart from access to technology, it's just basic problem solving. It's just basic curiosity of how technology works and what's the opportunities and how it could leverage. So from a commercial front, that's what we're working on as well.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I see, Paseka, you did have your hand up. I'm sure you have a question or comment for Vinay. Let me just get to you so I can allow you to ask your question. Sorry, you keep on disappearing, so let me just allow to talk. Okay, Paseka, go for it.
Absolutely, Jayashree. I actually have 4 questions for Vinay. But first and foremost, Jayashree, thank you for bringing the Legalist Wealth and our business to Vinay's attention. This makes my envisaged collaboration with Tarsus much easier. So on that note, I mean to say, Vinay, you mentioned that Tarsus has 1,000+ partners. Do you share your list of 1,000+ partners to the subscribers or the prospect clients to identify linkages? Or do you have a discovery session with the prospect client and then tailor a service for the client? I'm not sure if I should shoot all 4 or one at a time.
Yeah, we can go one at a time if you don't mind, Paseka. So just if I understood your question correctly, our partner channel, which comprises of 1,000+ resellers, you're asking do we position a reseller in front of a customer, or do we position the insight? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, just to add a bit more clarity as well. Those partners, the retailers, are they visible or accessible from the onset to a person that's engaging with your interface? Or is that your IP, confidential client privilege, you know?
No, it's accessible. I think yeah, go ahead.
No, I think, yes, that's exactly that. Then the second part of the question was just to say, if, or is it vice versa, where you would like to hear more about what the prospect client would like to achieve through Tarsus, and then you tailor some form of a service, and then identify which partners among the 1,000+ you would align them with, those that share the same synergies to the strategy you're trying to offer for the client?
Sick, it's a good question.
The modus operandi.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a bit of both, but more the latter. So we work quite hard within the communities and customer segments, because there's a lot of digital noise, if I could call it that, on customer needs. And we do a lot of market research on behalf of certain entities. So we take that and then we engage at customer level to understand exactly what is the requirement. And based on that, we provide the customer with options of the best fit service provider based on the solution that they're looking for. So it might be a geographic requirement, it might be quite niche requirement. So based on the requirement, and there might be multiple partners at any given time as well. So the job to be done might consist of two parts. I'll give you an example. It might consist of an analytics solution, and it might consist of just a legacy application that needs upliftment. So it might be two different partners that we associate.
Understood. No, thanks for that, Vinay. Then the second one, what is required from an entity of our caliber, at least startup levels? What would you require from us to acquire your services?
You're speaking from an ISV context, right? So we've got an ISV program that you open to join, and I'll post the link here and I'll pass it on to Jayshree as well. And you can just sign up for the program. You go through an assessment phase within that program. At the core of our program, our main contributor and partner is Microsoft when it comes to our partner program. And we build our solutions on Microsoft Azure. So one of the fundamental things that we look for is this solution built on a Microsoft cloud, and how can we scale this through the Microsoft entity? Thereafter, we go through an exercise in terms of product market fit, where we have a look at our existing partner channel versus the end customer channel that we have, and the profile and personas that we have versus the solution that you have, and can we augment product market fit? If those are in place, then we have conversations to move into the partner marketplace. Hopefully that answers your question, Pasek.
Yes, definitely. As a matter of fact, it touches on the next question partially, unless if we can summarize it. I just needed to know which phase of the business journey should the startup be. Understand you have a Q&A session from the onset. Will that kick one out if you are below a certain benchmark, or do you accommodate? Could you mention your thresholds?
Yeah. So we do accommodate in the sense that we work with different partners, Pasek. So if you're at a stage of your business where it's not at a high growth phase or promotes channel adoption, and assuming that it might be from a technology perspective, or that your business needs access to different partners, we don't just work across the ICT sector. We've got partners through finance, through multiple other communities that we refer you to. So it's a relationship that we have. Because I'll give you an example. We've got some ISVs that joined, I think it was about 2.5 years ago, and they were very conceptual in nature. This is pre-COVID. This is the solution we want to create. Here's the problem that we're going to solve. At that point, that solution hadn't even been practically built on a cloud. It was being tested. And so we assist those ISVs in the sense that we also are Microsoft for Startups partner. So we have access to the Microsoft backend to promote you through that ecosystem, be it access to credits, access to different communities that you need to engage with, or mentors and so forth. And then we revisit the equation potentially in 6 months or after you've gone through the necessary qualifications. And we try and create that lifetime journey. The intent is that if the solution does solve a specific problem, and we need to augment the solution, we take you through the process so you get ready to get into our marketplace and others as well.
As you were speaking, another follow-up question to my fourth one just raised. So in the list of 1,000+ partners, is this solely private sector, or do you have public sector as well?
This is a mix. So just clarity and definition on the partners. So when I refer to partners, it refers to resellers. So these are companies that resell technologies to customers, right? And in the biggest sense, we also do have partners that are ISVs that build applications and are development houses, but we also have partners that are ISPs and work on the connectivity front and so on. The 1,000 that I speak of are core resellers that engage with customers, but they spread across public and private sector.
Understood. Last but not least, please share the business model of Tarsus and how you benefit from the collaboration of these partners. How do you make your money?
It's a very good question. So it's Tarsus, and we Tarsus Technology Group. So we've got two entities, which is Tarsus Distribution, and that's the company that provides you or provides the channel more on the hardware front, and we are Tarsus On Demand. So we are more software centered, that's there. Revenue from a distribution front is more based on your consumption and your scale. So that's how we become mutually beneficial. So to give you an example, you would consume a cloud solution from us, right? And you would build your solution on that cloud solution. As your business scales, the more you utilize the cloud, the more services and the more consumption effectively that you would procure from your distributor or Tarsus in this example. So that's what the money-making model looks like. And the best intention from us is to help you scale or grow your business, because at the end of the day, as you grow, we grow as an ecosystem provider as well.
Paseka, I hope that answers all of your questions. Thank you so much.
Yes, it does, Jayshree. I'll follow your lead on the next steps.
No problem. I'll share. If you just go into my LinkedIn timeline as well, we have been sharing quite a bit on, becoming a Tarsus partner and some details there as well. But I will share some stuff with you individually. Thank you, Paseka.
Thanks, Paseka.
Okay, we'll probably come back to Paseka after we end the session, Vinay, just to get that final question for Mbe as well. I'm just going to go over to the other individuals on the line. If there are any questions from you guys, please raise your hands and then I'll give you permission to speak as well. Just give you a minute to do that. Okay, so I'll just keep an eye on that and you guys can as well. And I'll come back to the individuals with any questions. But, I have, we're working on a project and Mbe is actually assisting us with this as well. It's with about 120 youth in the Tembisa Township, Eastern Cape and KZN. And it's a township type distribution model where these individuals have been given smart devices with the specific need of helping spaza shops get access to goods and services. Now, what we're finding is that there's also a need to use some of these devices to provide other peripheral digital services. But in order to do this, we almost, and this is why I was looking forward to your chat as well from an ecosystem perspective. You can't do initiatives like this in isolation. So we can add value as a supplier and our client benefits from the work that we deliver. But to really make a difference to the township and to the community, we almost need collaboration from different players and non-related players. And for me, it becomes so much more powerful if we are able to get big organizations, including public sector, to collaborate at that level. I mean, what do you think we need to do? And I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I would really like your insight into, how do we get this right? How do we get companies to see the need? Like you said, big data companies need to make data available, but that's how they make their money. So are they really going to do the right thing? Or are we always going to be in a situation where, it's all about how do we milk society and get the most out of them, even though it's not necessarily giving us the greater good? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mentioned a bit earlier that one of the benefits of digital economies and digital transformation is that you could cross boundaries as an entity. You could go into geographic locations that you never thought you could do in the past. As much as I say South African companies can do that and go into other countries, what I find and what I hear in the market at the moment is the fear of other companies coming into South Africa and constraining the current customer base that we have. And we all know that's good for business, but it's also bad for business at the end of the day, but it's great for the consumer. When it comes to galvanizing South African business models, and for some of the entities that are here, I am aware of certain programs at the moment that are being developed to be run at a very mass scale. And the problem is you find that the bigger companies, they have the investment, and they have the resources, and they have the strategy and concepts to show digital skills and digital transformation in general to the economy and the nation at large, but they lack the execution. And what you're looking for is execution partners like yourself and forming an alliance and that ecosystem coming together. There are, or there will be in the near future, an ecosystem of providers that are centered on digital transformation and unpacking the next level of customer value and economy coming through. Jayshree, I'm also happy in the future to have this conversation about how Tarsus could potentially assist as well. We do have a few initiatives at play and working with a few others within certain other townships, but I think maybe if we can knit all of those together, we will have a bigger value play at the end of the day.
Well, thank you so much for that, Vinay. If there are no other questions or comments, Paseka, I know you had one other question for Mbe, and then I'll open it up to Vinay and Mbe for final comments as well. So Paseka, let me just allow you to speak again and ask your question to Mbe.
Thank you very much, Jayshree. My question to Mbe was in relation to biotechnologies as well. Thinking of some innovation in that space, but yeah, it would require a lot of research. It has to do with DNA computing versus robotics. So I'm caught in the ethics space. For one, is DNA computing viable, and would that be crossing over the ethnic, you know, that we have this, how can I put it, fear, this phobia. We are able to wear technology, but we are very hesitant to have technology within our bodies. So do you think that in the near future, DNA computing will be acceptable within this generation?
Paseka, thanks for the question. My feeling on it, so I like to answer questions about the future retrospectively. I like to say, how did we get here and how does that affect where we're going? So to give you perspective, in the last 18 months, I mean, one of the businesses that grew astronomically has been the blood testing business. Why am I forgetting their name now? I'll remember they're based in Auckland Park. Well, they're national, but they're based in Auckland Park. Lancet, yes, thanks, Jayshree. So Lancet has, and companies like Lancet have grown astronomically because we have questions about our DNA or our blood, but still our DNA. So because we don't have insight or knowledge on what's going on in our body, we went there. So that's what history has now shown us, astronomical growth and demand for their services. So the demand for insight and knowledge and understanding of what's happening in our body, it's already there. Now, otherwise, if it wasn't, businesses like Lancet wouldn't really matter, but they do. And so there will come a point where many more people will say, actually, I need this information maybe periodically and as time goes on, all the time, in real time. The issue of surveilling what's going on in people's body, I touched on this, the issue of data, where is it stored, who stores it, who, you know, currently when there's a data breach of a service provider. They just know your name, surname, email address, and as well as location. Imagine a data breach when you start doing innovating in the space that you're talking about, that literally knows your blood type, comorbidities, previous health conditions, medication that you're on. That would be profound. So I think there's a long discussion to be had about data security and privacy and the guarantee thereof before we can even talk about surveilling people's bodies and DNA in real time continuously. Once that answer's been questioned, I see that industry blowing up.
Thank you so much for that, Mbe. Paseka, did you have another question, or can we round that up?
Just a short follow-up, Jayshree, if you don't mind. So what is your opinion, Mbe, on human cloning as a means to optimize time and for the human to live better while the clone works harder and beyond us for the sake of legacy and generational wealth creation, for argument's sake?
I've heard about this before, and the only answer I'll give you is that once every human being is already working and has a job, then we can discuss human cloning. At the moment, we're South Africa, highest unemployment rate in the world. Can you believe it? That's us. I can't believe it. Highest unemployment rate in the world, 72% youth unemployment. No clones required now. We all need to be doing all the work.
That's a great answer. I respect that. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Paseka. Always lovely to have you on the line. Those of you, I promise I haven't paid Paseka to come online, but great questions. So Mbe, if I can ask for closing comments from you with regards to today's session, as well as your topic that you discussed, and then I'll hand over to Vinay.
Thank you again, Jayshree. I don't know if I have close-out comments, but thank you for the discussion. Vinay, thanks for giving more insight into exactly what Tarsus does and how complex the solution actually is. Very informative on my end, what your team is currently doing. I'll be keeping a close eye. Very excited about what you're doing. Jayshree, thanks for the opportunity as always.
Thanks so much, Mbe, and thanks for a very insightful presentation. I'm looking forward to more of these masterclasses, but I think also looking forward to working closely with Tarsus as we introduce them to some of our newer technology companies that we've brought on through some of our programs. So Vinay, I'd like to take this opportunity on wishing you and the Tarsus team as well, congratulations on winning your Microsoft award last night. So well done on that. I'm sure it takes a lot of effort to win an award like that, and I'm sure it's really well deserved as well. So thank you so much for giving us your time today and sharing with us, the model as well as some of your insights into some of our discussion topics. So I'd like to hand over to you for your final comments or anything else that you may have left out on your presentation.
Thanks, Jayshree. I see some of the Tarsus team is part of the attendance as well. And just to emphasize for them, because they've pushed really hard. It's the 4th time that we've managed to secure this award consecutively. And why I'm mentioning that is it's based on the innovation that we've done on Microsoft Azure, as well as the ISV community at large, as a growing indirect CSP. So it speaks to that model. To Mbe, I was really impressed with the presentation and the amount of content that I learned from, which is, I think there's going to be great synergy in the near future between YIEDI and what we're doing from a program perspective. And Jayshree, to yourself, thank you for the invite, and to the audience, thank you for taking the time out and listening to us. And hopefully we'll have many more of this in the near future.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just switch my video on for just a second so I can say hello to some of my colleagues, make sure that he's doing the right things there. It's been a while since I've been in front of the camera. I want to thank all of you for attending. For those of you that are joining us through our YouTube channel and watching this recording, thank you for listening in, and please do feel free to reach out to us to explore any of the opportunities that Vinay shared or some of the insights that Mbe has shared as well. So you can reach us on info@yiedi.co.za, and have a wonderful afternoon forward. And please feel free to check out some of our other YouTube content as well as masterclasses, and hope to see you join us on some of our acceleration programs. So have a wonderful afternoon further. And thank you again, Vinay and Mbe. And let's continue these really, really important conversations. So I will share on my timeline. Most of you are following me on social media. And when I do send a link to the recording, I'll share the link that Vinay mentioned as well in terms of how to work closely with Tarsus as well. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Vinay and Mbe. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Enjoy the afternoon. Bye-bye.